I'm Georgina Hall, and this is the Female Empowered podcast, inspired by the casual conversations I've had with thousands of women over my career in coaching. This is not just another wanky women's wellness podcast. We are bringing the uprising. Oh, hi friends. Welcome to the Female Empowered podcast. I'm your host, Georgina Hall, personal trainer, online coach, and offer of opinions. Today, I'm joined by... I always ask my guests what they want to be introduced as, and this one just said they wanted a drum roll. It's Louise Watson. Louise Watson is a big-time Ashtanga teacher, and she's a fellow person who has periods, and that is what we are going to be talking about today. All things periods, why it's empowering to know about your period, even as a non-bleeder. It can still be empowering to know about these things, because assuming that you know some people who do have periods. Menstrual cycle, how it affects us, energy-wise, mood-wise, all of the things. It is Louise Watson.
Hello.
Hi, Louise.
Hiya.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm all right. Not bad.
How was that introduction for you?
Good. Enjoyed the drum roll. Thanks.
Good. You're the only one who's got one so far, so congratulations.
Thank you.
How would you introduce yourself?
I'd probably just say Louise, just because that's what you normally say when you meet someone and introduce yourself. Don't normally give a title, but I liked your introduction, so we'll go with that.
Just giving the people a little bit of background on you.
Yeah, no, it's good.
And why you're so good and why they should listen to you.
Yeah, it's hard to do yourself, so I'll let you do it.
That's what we need to get better at as women, though. That's what I said to Beppy in the first episode. Like, everybody needs their own big up introduction, don't they?
What would you say?
For me?
Yeah.
Well,
you
I've
need to
done my
lead
one.
by example.
Well, that's it. I'm Georgina Hall. I am leader of the Female Empowered movement.
Okay, right, fair enough.
Offer of opinions on all things.
Okay, yeah.
I'm not bad at tooting my own horn. Like, that's not one of me problems.
Okay, well, I'll work on it for next time.
Yeah, I think women need to get better at
we'll give it to Louise.
Okay, Louise. It's important to say before we start that neither of us endocrinologists. Do you know what? I googled how to say that word properly before we started as well, and then I fell at the first hurdle. We are not endocrinologists.
That's proof we're definitely not. We can't even say it. We're really not.
Just in case you weren't sure, we're not gynecologists, we're not doctors. So we're just going to put that out there before we start talking about periods and menstrual cycles. If you do have any problems or irregularities, or there's anything that you're worried about, please go and see a doctor. We are just trying to help from our own experience and knowledge. So let's jump right in and go with the flow, pardon the pun. Do you want to kick us off, Louise? Louise actually did a talk on periods a few weeks ago during lockdown, which I was on, which is why I thought she would be a brilliant guest to have, because it was so interesting to hear from a different kind of perspective, non-sciencey perspective as well, very user-friendly is what I'm going to call it. So if you can kick us off, Louise.
Yeah, what do you want me to say?
Well, why do you know so much about this stuff, first of all?
Just like research, just my own reading really. Started off just because I've had a lot of my own problems really with periods. Always had really traumatic periods when I was a teenager, just like awful pain, and then went on the pill just like most people do. I think stayed on it for ages, kind of was quite glad to be rid of my period and everything I associated with it, and then came off the pill many years later, and like all the problems kind of came back, but this time I kind of wanted to address the root cause. Like I kind of felt like I'd just been covering up the problem without really addressing it. Like I hadn't solved it, I just covered up the symptoms. And then actually I had my really bad period pain, but also I had really bad acne as well, and I think I just couldn't ignore that. Like it was really horrific to have, but actually it was kind of a blessing in disguise because it made me want to look into it and like understand my hormones and just what was going on. So initially I started looking into it like to try and basically
that's interesting, isn't it? Because what you've kind of said there is that like the underlying stuff, the pain and the inconvenience and all of that, you would have just dealt with as a woman because it's part of being a woman and it's part of like your monthly cycle. But it was actually the vanity prompt that made you get it sorted.
Yeah, no, definitely. This is what I always think was so shocking, that I was willing to deal with that and just be absolutely floored for one day a month. And almost just like take it on the chin and not do anything about it. But then actually, vanity, when everyone else sees it, then you feel like you need to address it. And I think I always prided myself as like someone who didn't really wear a lot of makeup, quite liked to be natural. And then this acne was just this big kind of alarm system. Someone said actually your skin, it's like, if you have a big problem like that, it can be, you should kind of appreciate it. It's like, if you have a guard dog, if they never bark at you, they never tell you if there's anything wrong. So it's kind of like my skin coming out was actually like alarm bells, and it was kind of telling me that I had to address something. I had to like, there was something not quite right going on. And then as it happened, while I was in this phase of acne, which lasted about 3 years, I was volunteering at like a yoga place one summer, and a lady there, it was like this amazing Dutch lady called Morella, and she was doing a period workshop, and we could just go along as through the volunteers. And I didn't really like think anything of it, just kind of went along just like to join in with everyone else. But that's when I first heard about the menstrual cycle in this way, and not just your period, not just when you're bleeding, but actually every day of the month. And she introduced me to the idea of the seasons, and like, just from there kind of looked into it more and more.
Yes, right. So the seasons thing that you mentioned in your talk, that was one of my key takeaways. And my girlfriend and I now just refer to the whole month through the seasons. That's how we discuss it now. Like, oh, we're heading into winter. It's been a hard winter. I'm struggling in the summer.
It's so good though, because I think, especially because it is quite taboo still to talk about periods for a lot of people, it kind of makes it easier, like for kids, they can talk about emotions through their pets or like their cuddly toy. It's kind of like that, like it makes it easier for us to talk about the menstrual cycle if we can refer to the seasons.
Yeah, I think it does. Rather than being like, right, you're in your follicular phase, or I'm heading into my luteal phase now, so I'm feeling a bit shit. It is a lot easier to be like, right, I'm in the autumn, leaves are falling off the trees, I'm starting to feel dead inside. It is much more relatable.
Yeah, definitely.
So can you talk us through the seasons, Louise?
So in a sort of typical menstrual cycle, you go through all these hormonal fluctuations every month or every cycle, and you'll be basically a different person possibly every day of the cycle, but there'll be 4 distinct phases to the cycle. Roughly each week is a phase of the cycle, and they sort of match up with the seasons of the year. So you've got your own internal winter, spring, summer and autumn, roughly 1 week of the month. And that's why you'll feel completely different throughout this cycle.
We do, and we probably have 4 different physiologies as well throughout that month, throughout the cycle. From a scientific perspective, because of what your hormones are doing, you might be absolutely smashing PBs in the gym in your spring season, as you might call it, in your follicular phase, and then you might not be able to lift anywhere near the same weight the week before your period in your autumn, in your luteal phase.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's a big part of it, just your expectations just changing. Like once you understand and get on board with it, there's no point like trying to stay in summer all year. Like in the actual seasons, there's no point hating winter and being annoyed that it's not sunny anymore, because it's just inevitable. You can't expect it to stay like that all the time. It's just part of nature, and things always changing.
And this is what I think is going to empower women, is this knowledge. And I think the season part of it is a massive thing. This knowledge is going to give women their own their own understanding so that they can work their lives around how their body is going to be and how they're going to feel mentally and physically throughout the month. It's honestly game changing. It's revolutionary.
Yeah, definitely. So if we say we have roughly 4 seasons, we'll start with your bleed. So that's what everyone thinks of when they think of periods, and that is your menstruation is when you're bleeding. But your menstrual cycle, it doesn't end there. It's not like you just have a period and then the rest of the month
Then
nothing happens.
Tip-top.
Yeah, it's like you've got this whole cycle. So the time you're bleeding is normally referred to your winter phase. So normally the first day of your bleed, and that's kind of a time of rest and renewal. You're like releasing and letting go a lot. Like you're literally releasing blood, like the lining of your uterus is shedding. But at the same time, you can have a lot of emotional releases. And it's, definitely a time to be taking things easy and sort of embracing that kind of rest and nurture time. Also, you can have a lot of ideas at this time. It's quite good. It's like you get this inner period wisdom can come to you, like maybe a few days into your bleed, and it's kind of these insights you can have, and then it's almost like you're setting your intentions ready for your new cycle.
Oh, amazing.
So it's really good. So it's a good time to like journal if anything comes to you. And it's kind of like you were talking about, oh yeah, I'm feeling dead inside heading into winter. But actually, like, that's not a bad thing, because if you die, you get reborn.
Yeah.
So it's like a rebirth. Yeah. And then you've got like all these ideas, and it's like, where you're going to like focus your energy for the next cycle. You can like kind of plan what's coming up.
Wow.
Yeah, it is amazing. So then you'd have your spring phase. Oh yeah, and so hormonal like levels are very, very low at menstruation, which is possibly why you might feel very tired, or you might feel kind of low and like resting.
And what I remember you saying in your talk is that you've stopped practicing Ashtanga yoga, haven't you, when you are bleeding?
Yeah, like it's personal preference really, but for me it's just, especially because I do have I have always had this like quite traumatic period experience. I just think it's quite important to honor that, and it's like you don't need to fight against nature. You go to sleep every night and you don't feel guilty that that's your time to rest. Like you know that if you rest better, then you'll be more productive the next day. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like that with your cycle. Like I think if I rest and really allow myself to rest, so that it doesn't count if you feel guilty for it. You have to like indulge in the rest.
Probably rest. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think if I do that, and then I've got so much more energy, and I'm like much nicer to be around for other people, and I'll have like a much more enjoyable rest of the cycle if I just indulge and enjoy the rest kind of thing.
Yeah, you kind of gave me permission to rest when I heard that. I was like, oh, right, yeah. Maybe if I do try not pushing myself when I feel like shit, maybe I'll feel better in a few days. Maybe I'll train harder and better in the next couple of weeks because I've taken that time to rest where I needed it.
And it just does come back down to that same thing, that you're not meant to be the same every day. Like it's fine to ebb and flow. Like actually that's what's naturally going on inside. And if you fight against it, that could be where you get this inner conflict and turmoil.
Yeah.
So that's kind of your winter. And that, if you're tracking your cycle, we're starting with winter because the first day of your bleed would be day 1 of your cycle.
Right.
So then after your winter, you come into spring. So that's after you've stopped bleeding and your estrogen is rising quite a lot now.
Yeah.
And that's like a bit of a feel-good hormone. You'll look more attractive. Literally, like you look different. Your hair and skin will feel better. Your lips are plumper. All sorts goes on.
Yeah.
And it's quite like a fun and playful time normally, especially if you've rested fully. You're then quite excited to get back out into the world. You're kind of like fun and playful, and it's almost like your inner child time, that you can have fun and get out there back in the world.
And it's mad, isn't it, how your body image can change around that time. You suddenly like, yeah, look at me, I'm slamming. And you're looking at the bits that you like about yourself instead of picking out the bits that you don't like about yourself. Your whole kind of idea about your body and yourself changes.
Definitely. And you will probably feel lighter as well. Estrogen's like a natural hunger suppressant. So you won't have as much of an appetite at this time, which for some people, like if you are dieting or following a strict plan, like that might be the time where
A
you
lot of
find
people
it
say,
easier.
follicular phase is a good time to start.
Yeah. So yeah, and you're just kind of getting out there in the world. And if you think it's in nature, like the menstrual cycle is really there to allow people to get pregnant. So you're coming up to your ovulation. So this is your time where you're going to look more attractive, you're going to feel better, and you're going to put yourself out there to potentially
Peacocking.
find a mate. Yeah, yeah, you are, you're peacocking. So yeah, that's roughly your spring phase. I'm sort of going to be saying the good about all the seasons, but obviously there's like good and bad to everything. But I'm just on a period positive mood, so I'm just
I think we need to be period positive. Yeah, we're trying to empower people, Louise.
Yes, okay. No, and that is true though. I think that's so true though. There's good in every season. Once you get on board with it, you can see the good and like use each season to your advantage.
Definitely.
So that's spring. Is that enough about spring?
Yeah, that's enough about spring. I think, we're feeling good. We're feeling slamming. We're lifting heavier weights probably because, again, the estrogen as well is a natural anti-inflammatory. So that can help your DOMS, any soreness. So you might be feeling good about training around that time.
Also, you're normally going to be a bit more risky, like up for trying new things. So, for instance, I'm in my spring now, which is probably why I agreed to this podcast.
Yes.
If you'd got me in autumn, I'd be like, nah.
What I'm going to do is write down the phases of all my friends, so I know when to ask them questions.
No, it's true. And then once you know, like, I can tell some of my friends, I can tell which season they're in. They can tell which season I'm in. Even some of my students, and I think it's really interesting, and it really helps that you know where people are at and you know how to help.
I think it's really obvious what season I'm in all the time. I think you can probably tell from my social media and everything.
Yeah, exactly. I think my social media definitely shows it. So yeah, 100% you can tell.
Yeah. Let's hear about summer.
Okay, so summer, time to shine. So the peak of summer is your ovulation time. So that's when you're going to release your egg that could potentially be fertilized.
Mine's probably not going to be.
Probably not. But yeah, it doesn't matter because you're still getting like
It'll be
ovulation.
a miracle if it is.
Yeah, like some people say they don't really need to ovulate, they don't want to have a baby, but it's such an amazing time and an amazing thing. It doesn't need to be about having a baby. Like this, you can enjoy and reap all the benefits of ovulation without.
Good job, really, isn't it?
A baby. Well, yeah.
Tell us all the good things about ovulation.
So that's kind of just as you ovulate or just before you ovulate, your estrogen is going to be at the highest, and you also get some testosterone as well. So just
again, like good for training. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so this might be sort of feeling great, want to get out there in the world. Also, you're probably feeling quite confident, quite ballsy, probably feel like you're just smashing everything, just
nice.
Pretty happy.
Loving the summer.
Yeah, well, yeah, obviously there's good and bad to them all, but summer, I'd probably say is quite a socially acceptable season for women. Like this is kind of how society likes to see women, is spring and summer.
Yeah.
Like flirty, playful, attractive, like sexual.
And I've heard that you literally get better looking around ovulation. Like you look more symmetrical. Is that right?
Yeah. I think even like your scent is attractive to the opposite sex, or to
putting out all those pheromones.
Yeah, like so yeah, that kind of happens. So that's.
Can I read you something interesting that came up when I was doing my period research?
Yeah.
I got this off Amelia Thompson's Instagram, by the way. She's really good to follow if anybody's interested. She's a doctor, so she puts out proper scientific information, but she's quite holistic as well, so she's into all of this stuff. So she's talking about your body image in regards to your cycle, and they said that there was a research done suggesting that strippers make more money during ovulation than any other time. It says normally cycling participants earned about $335 per 5-hour shift during ovulation, $260, so it's gone down per shift during the luteal phase, and $185 per shift during menstruation.
Oh my God.
So the earnings per shift for these strippers actually differed depending on where they were in their cycles.
But I'm not surprised because yeah, you might look physically different, but like so much of your attractiveness is down to how you feel, and you're going to be feeling different. If you're on your period, you probably don't feel like stripping.
I wouldn't feel like stripping on my period.
Well, I mean, you might do, but you know, like, I guess, yeah, that's like kind of makes sense, really.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting.
Yeah, like it.
And also interestingly, any strippers that are on oral contraceptive, theirs were pretty consistent. Their shifts and their earnings were pretty consistent throughout the whole cycle.
Ah, okay. But yeah, I think this is the thing as well, like with oral contraception, you might be steadier in lots of ways, like maybe your mood or lots of things might be steadier, but steady isn't necessarily better. That I think it's more exciting to ride the wave and get the highs and the lows. Do you know what I mean? Like, yeah. So just because it's steady doesn't mean, oh right, well, steady, stable, that's what it should be. Like actually,
yeah,
you're cyclical. You're meant to ebb and flow.
To have it, and it's probably important to say that if there are any irregularities, or again, if your menstrual cycle is switched off completely, which I used to have when I was competing as a boxer, and I was training hard, overtraining, undereating, and I didn't have a menstrual cycle at all. And it wasn't until I got a nutritionist actually who started feeding myself correctly, did my cycle come back. And you see this a lot in the fitness world. Bodybuilders, bikini competitors, that kind of thing, actually get down to such low body fat percentages that your body goes, nah, you can't have a baby because you haven't got enough body fat, and it kind of shuts it down.
Yeah, so it's really clever. It's like it knows that it needs to create this safe place for a baby to potentially grow, and if you're not nutritioning, what do you say?
Nutritioning. That's what we're going to call it, Louise.
Nutritioning. If you're not nutritioning, then it's not the right environment for a baby to be born. So yeah, it'll shut off ovulation. And the other thing about summer as well is, you know, you kind of like things might just look all rosy. It's kind of like you've got your rose tinted glasses on. So people will probably look a lot more attractive to you as well. And you can kind of gloss over anything. Little things just maybe won't bug you. And it's quite a giving phase. So you might want to do stuff for other people a lot. You might just want to like tell people like how like good things, big them up. It's quite a good time to big up other people and just to give. I think like I don't have kids, but I think people who have kids tend to find this time quite an easy time to mother. Like they've got more energy and they're in quite a giving mood.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so that's summer. Having said that, just after ovulation, your estrogen dramatically dips, and that can kind of wipe you out a bit. Your testosterone will dip as well, and your progesterone starts to rise, and that combination is quite sudden. It can kind of floor you a little bit. So yeah, you might have like a bit of a summer dip and then cruise back into late summer after that, if that makes any sense.
So like we might have a bit of shitty weather in August, but then the sun comes back out in September.
Exactly. It's like amazing. Indian summer comes back out. So yeah, because I think that confused me, because I think I took these seasons a bit too literally, and I was kind of like, well, it's summer, I should have loads of energy, I should be out there doing stuff. But like actually if you maybe like Google it, this mad drop in hormones, of course you're gonna feel like a bit of a drop.
And when I listened to your first talk, I think I glossed over that bit as well, because I was like, it's the summer. You know, like that little snowman in Frozen who's like, loves the summer. And then was like, what? Why am I feeling like this in the summer? Why do I need to lie down so much? And that big drop explains it.
Yeah, so definitely like the seasons are a really good way to think of it, but they're not every day in August is sunny necessarily.
Great analogy.
And then, so the final phase would then be autumn. So at this time, your progesterone kind of takes over. So in the first half of your phase, so your follicular phase, you'd have estrogen as your main hormone. And then in the luteal phase, which is like what we're coming into after ovulation, you'd have progesterone taken over. So that's kind of like your chill hormone. It's quite a soothing, and it's kind of will make you more tired, but it can also be like a really nice thing. You know, it can be like a mood booster, kind of a chill, like a calming. I don't know how I normally describe that. I feel like I normally describe it better.
That makes sense. I can visualize your description. It's the like snuggly time.
And the point is, so it's kind of like if you did conceive, then this is the time where your body is going to like force you to rest, like to potentially support a growing baby. So it's like the time to slow down. It's probably the time that people struggle with the most, I'd say.
Yeah, because then you're coming into PMT season as well, aren't you?
Yeah. So yeah, I think autumn gets like a really bad rep, but there's so much good in it as well. So it's like you've got permission to slow down now. You don't have to be out there in the world. And I think what makes it difficult is trying to fit into maybe society's expectation. You know, like, oh, I've got to be this fun out there. Oh, I've got to be posting selfies on Instagram. Like in your autumn, you just might not want to be.
Yeah, withdrawn.
Yeah, I'm like way more antisocial, and I just like kind of like shut off from the outside world. And then things will start to bug you more because your rose-tinted hormone of estrogen isn't there.
Oh, this is ringing bells.
So things come to light, and it could literally be anything. It could be like, you know, something like in your house that's bugging you that you want to fix. It could be someone else. It could be things about yourself, but it's like your inner critic comes into their own in your autumn phase. But the inner critic's really wise, so it's good. It kind of tells you what's going on. I think it can get carried away, so it's maybe just good to listen to what it's got to say, but not necessarily act at that time. You know, maybe like I think it gets carried away, but there's often an element of truth in whatever it's bringing up.
I feel like I'm learning a lot from you, especially as somebody who is in a relationship with another woman. It can be a roller coaster around this time. You might just be annoyed about nothing, and I don't know why, I'm just angry. And then she might just be sat crying, and you might be like, what's wrong? And she's like, I don't know.
I want to ask you about this, because I think we talked about it, trying to work out, is it better if you sync up, if you're in a relationship with, if there's two menstruators in a relationship, is it better to be synced or not?
It's a tough call, isn't it? Because if one person was in their summer and the other person was like crying for no reason, then they would be better set up to deal with that. But then at the same time, if you synced up, at least you both get maybe 2 weeks of the month where it's bearable.
You're both on top of the game, and I guess you can both just leave each other alone. You know, like maybe in autumn, like maybe give them some space, or like
just go to your own separate houses for maybe a week every month.
But yeah,
I'd be interested to know if anybody else has any takes on this. If anybody can send us any messages, shed any light, or share what happens with them around that time.
Yeah, I think it would be really interesting. But the autumn, like the good thing is your critic is kind of good because you come into the end of a cycle. It's like every month you've got a project. So you know you have your ideas phase of the project.
Yeah.
That's like your spring. And then you like do all of it, put it into action. And then it's like you review it and sort of edit it and analyze. You kind of like look back on your cycle.
I love that actually, because I have these phases where I'm like, yes, I'm so creative and I'm so inspired and I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that and have loads of ideas and write them all down. And then like the motivation just starts to dwindle, and it's obviously riding through the seasons. And then I'm like, get to that point where I'm like, oh God, no, I can't be bothered. Why did I ever start that? And then it comes back again. You're like, but I could do this and I could do that. And that's the roller coaster of life.
Exactly. It's like not a bad, like it's good to edit your projects and like review stuff. You can review your cycle, things that are coming up. Yeah, maybe don't act on them all, but listen to what's going on. If there's some recurring thing that comes up in your autumn, there's probably a reason why. It kind of, it kind of makes you face like the truth can come up.
Mm.
So instead of thinking of it as like your autumn's like this negative time, more that you basically just had your rose tinted glasses on the rest of the time and glossed over it.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean that this stuff wasn't there. And also, like, you know, if you are like, you can literally edit and refine stuff. So I don't know if it's the same in your training, but for instance, in my yoga practice, this might be the time where I'm quite like strict and disciplined, and I might like really want to work on something, you know, quite focused and I don't know, quite, yeah, so refining what I'm doing. Or if you're like a writer, you're writing, you know, content for a website or a blog, it's a good time to go back and edit. It's like you're going to see things that aren't quite right.
Yeah, interesting.
So yeah, it's pretty good for that as well.
This is another reason why it's so good to log stuff, journal, write diaries, track all these symptoms. And since I watched your talk, I downloaded the Clue app and I started tracking. So it kind of helps you realize if you're just being an arsehole or if you're in the autumn, or maybe both. And, you know, where you might feel tired, where you should give yourself a break, where you might actually just be being lazy, and all of those things. I think it's been really good.
Yeah. And actually, yeah, so then your second half of the cycle is more about you, sort of, I guess, what's now referred to as self-care a lot. It's like you might have been all this giving and wanting to do everything for other people in your summer, but now you might not want to do that anymore. And I think that's why some people can struggle as well, because they feel maybe like they should be, or maybe other people are expecting them to give, and actually it's the time when they shouldn't. They should be just looking after themselves.
Yeah. This is why I wanted to do this, because this is really empowering, because I think this is going to give a lot of people permission to take things back for themselves and filleth their own cuppeth.
Yeah, exactly. Like I think it's needed. I think it's just because we live in a world that doesn't honour women's cycles normally. Like some places do now, but it's quite difficult, and you kind of expected to do the same every day. But I think once you realise actually, like you're probably way more powerful, but you just have to kind of work with the ebbs and flows, like tap into the powers of each phase.
I was speaking to a client this morning actually, and we were saying, like, because she said she felt so ill on her period that if it was just a normal day, she felt ill enough that she would ring work and say, I can't come in, I feel like absolute crap. But because she knows, no, this is part of my cycle that I have to deal with every single month, you just have to get on with it. And I was like, whoa, aren't women amazing? Like, so strong that you have to go through that all the time.
Yeah. Although I feel like she still should have taken the day off if she
felt she did.
Okay, good. Because that's the thing as well. I think it's like your body's doing this amazing thing and it's speaking to you all the time. So like if you really do feel really bad, like it's telling you something. Maybe it's because you need to take that time off. But like I think when you look into it as well, you really can respect your body a lot more, not just for like maybe what it looks like, but what it's doing every month, what it's providing you with, and like it's just so clever. So yeah, I think it kind of helps you respect your body, because
and I think that's a really important thing, because especially in my line of work, a lot of people are hung up on their weight and what the scale's saying, all of that. But when you actually delve a bit deeper and you look at this kind of thing, women's bodies are well, everybody is amazing, but what it can do for you and what it has to endure and all the things that it copes with all the time, we really need to cut ourselves some slack and appreciate how meant we are.
Yeah, it's like you see the bigger picture. And then if you go into the way bigger picture, it's like all the cycles of your body linked to the seasons of the year, the cycle of the moon. It's actually like puts you into context of actually that's kind of this underlying current that's running through you, and what you look like is really just irrelevant.
Yeah, completely irrelevant. We are at one with the universe, Louise.
Yeah, I think we are. I think like the menstrual cycle can connect you to it.
Yeah, and actually you've just kind of touched on that a little bit with the moon, because I remember you saying if you aren't sure about your cycle, if you aren't sure which is day one, you can go with the moon cycle.
Yeah, so like you were saying before, some people might not have a period at the moment for any reason, potentially if they are overtraining or under eating, or if you are maybe post-menopause or any other reason.
Yeah, POCS, anything.
Yeah. So, or even if you just have irregular cycles that you find hard to track, tracking the moon can be really helpful. So it's kind of similar things. So your full moon, if you think about the full moons when it's really bright in the sky, and that's when you're out there in the world, bright, shining, that's kind of your ovulation time, that's your summer. And then the new moon is when it's dark, and that's kind of your dark winter. So that's when you're bleeding. And then it makes sense because your bleeding is the start of a new cycle. So that's like a new moon. And if you, people who like work quite closely with the moon and set intentions, the new moon's a good time to kind of let go and release whatever's gone on before, and then sort of set intentions for the cycle ahead. And that's kind of similar to what you do when you're on your period as well.
Yeah. Very interesting. Really good. Can I ask you some questions that I've got from my clients, and we'll see if we can answer them between us?
Yep.
We'll try and quick fire it. Okay. So one person asked, is it true about girls syncing up together?
I've read that it's not true, but I really like to believe it is, because I'm sure it's happened to me quite a lot when I've lived with different girls.
This is kind of an anecdotal thing, isn't it? A lot of people can say, oh yeah, that has happened to me, but I don't know if there's any
I've read that it's a load of rubbish, but a lot of people do end up syncing with the moon, which can mean that you end up being synced, but apparently it's not because you're in close contact with each other. It might just be that you both happen to maybe sync with the moon.
And it's not like there's an alpha female and everybody syncs up with that alpha female.
No, well, not that I know of. I'm going to go with no.
No, and from my experience, I'm not sure that there's. I don't think it's foolproof, that one. No. Weight gain during period. So we've kind of touched on that, especially with the body image stuff.
Oh yeah, yes. So probably should have said as well, you're going to be hungrier in your luteal phase. Yeah. So progesterone is rising, that's going to increase your appetite, but you also will like burn more. I think your metabolism's higher as well, is that right? Yeah. But yeah, you're gonna you hold more water retention, so that's why a lot of people might feel quite bloated. So you might be heavier because of water retention, but also because you might have been craving different kinds of foods, and you might have been resting and not working out as much. Yeah. So kind of a combination. But like we were saying, that's fine. You can
that's all right.
And be a bit heavier or fatter or whatever you want to be. It's like you're cyclical, so that's fine.
Yeah, give yourself permission. It's why I drum it into my clients, where I try to not compare your weight through the month, because if we've just said you 4 different physiologies, you want to be comparing your week 1 physiology with the next month week 1, and your week 2 with your week 2, week 3 with week 3, week 4 with week 4. You don't want to be comparing that spring body to that autumn body.
Yeah, I think you've maybe said this to me before. Yeah, I think that's so important. And then makes a lot of sense.
And then, like you said about you do actually burn a few more calories as well, so you can probably afford to eat between 100 to 300 extra calories and be fine. Or even I would encourage people who struggle, if you're trying to lose weight and you're struggling because your appetite is increased in your luteal phase, is just eat to maintenance and just be in a deficit for a couple of weeks of the month instead. It might be easier to adhere to a diet if you're on one.
Particularly if you're someone who does end up getting a bit irritable, like some of that could be because you're hungry.
If you're hangry in the autumn, that's not going to be good, is it?
Yeah, you need to be like, it's not worth risking it for me anyway. If I get hungry,
me neither.
Too late.
Have some chocolate, honey, it's good for you. Another one that I've been asked is, why do I get temperature changes around my periods, cold or hot sweats the week before?
Well, your temperature definitely increases after ovulation. So I think this is linked to you burning more calories as well, maybe. I don't know if it's linked, but yeah, so your progesterone goes up after ovulation. So a lot of people who are tracking their ovulation will check their body temperature each day, and it kind of dips to ovulation and then it will increase afterwards. So you'd maybe likely feel hotter in the second half of the cycle. I'm not sure about hot and cold. I don't know how old they are. It could be maybe linked to menopause.
Yeah, that's what I thought as well. Yeah, could be. But yeah, that makes sense with with your temperature increase, doesn't it? Another person has said that they feel really anxious on their period, like worse than normal. And they also mentioned that they feel more wiped out, which we've covered. But I guess an anxiety thing could be to do with that withdrawn feeling, that wanting to go inwards during your autumn or winter.
Yeah, and it could be a number of reasons. Like, it could be this guilt thing. Maybe it's you feel like you should be out there, but you're not, and you've got this inner turmoil with what your body's doing and what you think you should be doing. Or it could be even, like for some people, if they are trying to conceive, their period isn't going to be a time where they're going to be particularly happy to see it. So that could be anxiety, or I guess I think people kind of have a natural season that they feel most comfortable in, which can change over time. But say you're someone who likes being out there and sociable, and like you might actually just feel quite uncomfortable in your winter, or maybe even, maybe you've always had some guilt about taking time for yourself, and that could cause some anxiety.
Yeah, I understand how she feels though. This is another conversation that I had a client with this morning when I said I feel quite withdrawn during that time, and it's almost like I want to be invisible. And a lot of people think of me as being quite an extrovert person, but I'm very much in the middle on a sliding scale, and I'm so introverted during that time. I literally, when I'm teaching classes and stuff like that, I'm like, just don't look at me. I don't want anybody to look at me. I just want to be invisible.
That's what I'm like when I'm teaching yoga classes. Like, I just can't bear for anyone looking at me. But I'm like, but then you have to, because you're teaching, so like that can cause some anxiety.
Yeah, there's a little bit of conflict there, isn't there?
Yeah. Oh, I just thought of something else. But there are like some conditions as well, though, like where if people can experience quite extreme anxiety or depression linked to like PMS, or so maybe before or during the period. So yeah, definitely look into that if it feels like it's maybe quite extreme.
Yeah, and just another little nudge that everybody should have a therapist if you have access to somebody, if you can speak to a therapist about that, because there might be something much deeper going on. And if you have someone to bounce it off, or a lot of women would probably be on the depression scale during that time of the month. So yeah, I just think everybody should have someone to speak to about it.
Oh, I know what I was going to say. You're saying about introverts and extroverts, and I think when everyone, like, I think I felt like, you had to be either one or the other, an introvert or an extrovert. But through your cycle, you're naturally going to be both. Even if you're more of an introvert or more of an extrovert, the whole point of it is you've got an extroverted time and you've got an introverted time. So I think everyone thinks they're crazy because they change all the time, but you're meant to.
Yeah, and this is another way that we can take back power as females, is by having that knowledge, and don't be called a crazy bitch, because it's just nature.
Yeah, it's crazy if you don't change. It's boring.
My last one that I've got for you off of the Instagram is how to better listen to our bodies and energy levels, which I think we've pretty much covered there, haven't we?
Yeah, definitely, like you said about tracking it, so you can use an app or just journaling. Just I don't think people can even see this video, but I'll show you what I do.
Yeah, they'll be able to see it on YouTube. So if you're listening to it and you're interested, head on over to the YouTube, search Phemale EmPowered and watch this.
So I've not got all my weeks done actually, but I don't need to read it. But this is kind of how I track it. So that's like day 1.
It looks thorough.
So, but it's just a little quarter of a page for each month. And then you go back the next cycle. So I've got 4 day 1s next to each other there, and like 4 day 2s.
That makes
sense.
Then
it's really easy to compare and see what's going on, and like just be more aware and be like, oh, actually, like I felt really tired around these days last month as well. And then you can plan for it a bit more, and I think just have different expectations of yourself.
Yeah, maybe don't make social plans if you know that you're going to feel introverted.
Yeah, definitely. But just observing it.
Put all your plans in the summer.
Yeah,
that's what I do. I'm going to start doing it. I like your diary because I'm just lazy and have the Clue app where you can input your symptoms really easily. But I like the way that you can see yours next to each other. You see day 1 from last month, your day 1 this month.
And you don't have to write a lot, or you can, sometimes I go into the back if I just feel like I've got loads I want to write, the back of it is just like free
Journal.
journaling. But
Yeah.
that bit's kind of just like key points I want to put in, and then it's good to compare.
Lovely. Well, thanks for that, Louise. We've got loads to be getting on with there. I think that was really helpful. Thank you very much for joining me, having that conversation.
No worries, enjoyed it.
If anybody has anything to add in, then they can find us at Phemale EmPowered on Instagram. Louise, where can we find you?
Round and about, don't know, on Instagram and my website, maybe.
What's your website? Tell us your web address.
louiseyoga.co.uk.
And I will link to your Instagram in the notes as well, so that people can come and find you if they've got any questions, or they can come and join you for some yoga, which is how I know Louise instantly. I like to go through our Ashtanga yoga. So if you've got anything to say to me or Louise, you can find us on Instagram. You can go to Phemale EmPowered and get involved in the discussion, because we would like to hear any feedback or any insights that you may have. Thank you so much, Louise, for joining me today.
Worries. Thank you.
And we shall see you all soon. Thank you very much. Goodbye. Thank you for listening to the Phemale EmPowered podcast. If you want to hear more from us, you can follow us on Instagram at Phemale EmPowered, where you can also get involved with our discussions, and feel free to send us a message. If you want to improve your well-being in a non-wanky way, you can join hundreds of other like-minded people in my monthly subscription group for live training sessions, daily workouts, nutrition tips, meditations, and more. Only $10 a month. Email me now, Georgina@georginahalltraining.com.